I love tabletop role-playing games, and I have for a very long time. The world's most popular TTRPG, Dungeons & Dragons, has made a massive resurgence in the past decade with the release of 5th edition, and for gamers, some of us are looking for that immersive experience in video game form. Now, while Baldur's Gate 3 is out, and hopefully going to get a Dungeon Master mode like Divinity Original Sin 2, wink wink, it's a good start, but it's not the same. When it comes to the MMO space, however, there are only 2 official Dungeons & Dragons MMOs, Dungeons & Dragons Online and Neverwinter. And while D&D Online is its own fiasco, Neverwinter is the focus this time. And from a veteran Dungeon Master and player, there are 2 caveats you must understand if you're looking to play Neverwinter and have it be worth you coming back. First, Neverwinter is an absolute cash sink. And second, Neverwinter is not a true Dungeons & Dragons experience. If you can play an instance-based action combat MMO with a gear grind, then Neverwinter is definitely worth a look. So let's get into the details on why this might be the most divisive game I've reviewed to date. To give you the history of 4th edition would take a great amount of time, so let me give you the TLDR version as best I can. 4E was released in June of 2008 after the wildly successful 3.5 edition of Dungeons & Dragons with a pretty hefty overhaul. While certain aspects of the game had been streamlined, many players had an issue with the combat aspect of 4E, as it seemed that combat was the primary focus. In addition to new conditions, situations, and reactions and many other aspects of combat, 4E felt like a slog to run. To many players, it became more akin to Warhammer. In my personal experience, a single combat encounter could last up to 2 sessions if we were playing a 3 to 4 hour session. The one really great thing about 4E was the introduction of cantrips, spells you can use without using spell slots, allowing casters a bit more flexibility with their casting, a much needed refresh on caster classes. The biggest change was the feeling that 4E felt more like a video game on paper. This kind of divided the community. So logically, a pen and paper game designed like a video game should be pretty good as a video game, right? Well, let's find out together as Neverwinter goes for the attempt and we look into its execution. The new player experience is something we're all familiar with when it comes to Cryptic's character creation. Having the D&D IP at the forefront, however, things get a bit different. While you only start with 2 character slots, you start out choosing your race, and all races have racial bonuses that can also affect your class in helpful or harmful ways depending on your build. While many races are unlocked, there are several races that are behind a paywall at the Dragonborn and Aasimar, just like wizards would keep new races in new books. Classes are next, and there are 9 to choose from, which is a far cry from the almost 22 in 4th edition, but I can respect the selection as it's likely for balancing the game. Cleric, Barbarian, Warlock, Rogue, Fighter, Bard, Paladin, Ranger, and Wizard are your choices, and these make decent sense, but where's my monk? Each class has a starter build, and then you will choose one of 2 focuses later in the game. This is disappointing as there are so many subclasses in D&D that only being able to choose one or the other makes Neverwinter feel linear and uninspired. 4th edition allows you to pick a new ability every few levels, kind of creating a custom build, but this feels limited in this instance. Character creation is fairly deep because you get to choose between a preset and getting into the nitty-gritty of making your hero the way you want, with tons of options to choose from. Credit to Cryptic for taking the time on allowing players to really get into detail of their character. For flavor, you can choose your background, hometown, and deity. You can even have a biography for your character, should you want to dive into the RP aspect a little deeper. You'll then see your character's build before naming your character. The stat block, unfortunately, isn't adjustable. The game gives you the standard point array with your racial bonuses added. This limits your ability to min-max or build your hero to fit a specific build like you can in D&D proper. The tutorial is something any D&D player has experienced, with your character being shipwrecked on the Sword Coast with no equipment. Extremely par for the course, but this tutorial is great as it doesn't throw everything at you all at once. Much like Elder Scrolls Online, Neverwinter spreads out the tutorial into the first missions you do into the Adventurers Guild, to drip feed all of the new info and details of the game. Protector's Enclave is the primary hub of Neverwinter, and it feels lived in and busy. This is both good and bad, as it can be immersive and overwhelming at times with everything being crammed into such a finite space. Combat is solid action combat that feels a bit like Terra, just a bit jankier. Animation locks drive me nuts, but the action is there. Depending on your class, you also have a special mechanic such as blink for wizards or shielding for fighters. This adds a bit of uniqueness to each class in some way, which is nice and I feel is needed to keep players interested in trying all the other classes. Fortunately, combat encounters don't last forever, unlike 4E proper. The overall new player experience is a great one, as there are many of MMOs out there that don't even have voice-acted NPCs, let alone a massive amount of lore to work from. While it's still a bit outdated and dire need of a refresh, I would easily put Neverwinter's starting experience in my top 10. After that starting experience, however, is where things get questionable. Neverwinter hosts many features from many other MMOs, but these features have a toll that must be paid. There are times where I feel like in order for you to genuinely enjoy Neverwinter, you have best be prepared for a grind, as everything outside of the MSQ is locked. Crafting is ready for you, should you be into crafting, and it's serviceable for what it needs to be, but the best gear is likely in the cash shop. Now, PvP is available for basically anyone once you get to Protector's Enclave. Additional content, like dungeons on the other hand, requires the bane of this game's existence: a high enough gear score. Gear score, to me, is the game breaker in Neverwinter. Sure, games like Destiny 2 have gear-gated content too, but Neverwinter is gear level required to even begin to enjoy this game. My level 20 character had a max gear score of 19,704 after maxing my character, but after grinding a few more hours, I jumped to a paltry 22,479. The only content I could do with that gear score that I hadn't already completed was the Yawning Portal content, and that's only because the gear score requirement was 18k. The next content I can play after that has a gear score requirement of 24k, and gear drops aren't all that common. Dungeon footage would have been awesome to put in this video, but I needed a high enough gear score to match the other players. Neverwinter does drop some boosted gear from time to time as kind of a mercy, but it may just barely get you to where you need to even enjoy more content. If you really want to get the gear you need, you're going to either have to grind it out or take a trip to the cash shop. You know, the Zen Store is an ironic name, as my Zen has been harshed by this store. I've said it before, but the Zen Store is my least like in-game store across the MMO space, and that's including Lotro's cash shop and the stupid writing skill. Items like resurrection scrolls, crafting items, and keys to loot boxes can all be found in the Zen Store. This store makes the entire game pay for convenience and pay to have fun, to be honest. It's a whale store and it shows. Now, while I understand devs need to eat and that games as a service is a business, the Zen Store is extraordinarily harsh. $50 can guarantee a 30k item level boost and a level 20 character boost. 30k! Think about that. 30k item score allows you to play a ton of content, but not all. I said it at the top of this video. Neverwinter is a cash sink, and in this economy, I think I need to get a second job to keep playing this game. But let's give credit where it's due. The Zen Store does show you what gear you're getting in your loot boxes before buying them, so at least you can make an informed decision prior to buying keys and boxes. Well, is Neverwinter worth playing in 2023? Yes, but again, with caveats. This game has so much lore and adventure to run with that the game could go on for another 10 years without much of an issue. A combat update and some reworking of the character creation would be nice, but the system is built as it is. The cash sink sucks eggs, and the gear score basically being behind a paywall is a serious detraction from Neverwinter, but at its core, it is a good game to get into. That being said, if you're looking for a real Dungeons & Dragons experience, just look for online DMs and games through sites like Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, or Foundry. If you're looking for an in-person experience, check around for your local hobby or comic shops, as they usually have an Adventurers League game running at some point alongside wargaming and likely many other games played weekly. Learning any TTRPG is fun, and with the right group can be your next hobby. Unfortunately, Neverwinter doesn't give you that deep D&D feel, but it does point you in the right direction. How do you feel about Neverwinter in 2023? Let us know in the comments and hit up MMOBomb.com for news, updates, streams, and more in the realm of the multiplayer. Stay safe, stay sick, and may the dice roll in your favor.